Hi, I'm Ken Brown. Thank you for your interest in our video on doing calligraphy with markers. I am so pleased to present to you a brand new kit that has everything you need to learn calligraphy in one box. There are 8 markers in 5 different sizes in a variety of colors. You have tracing paper, parchment paper. There is a booklet that has great photographs of hand positions and pen positions to show you exactly where you need to be throughout your learning process. Also in our product line is a wonderful practice pad with lines spaced just exactly right for all the various pens. There's a template called a guideliner that will help you establish the correct height of your letters and spacing between lines. Then there is a book called Inspirations. It's filled with quotes done in calligraphy in several different styles combined with artwork that'll help you decide how you can make your own projects really work nicely with your own calligraphy. It's everything you need in one kit. At our table, you see that the place cards are done in calligraphy and they were done with a marker. There is also a wedding certificate or a marriage certificate that shows how it has been filled out in a very elegant style using markers. The invitation, the envelope, the photo album, all done in calligraphy with markers. It's a terrific way to use an art form, a great way of self-expression, and if you'll join me, I'll show you how you can do it quickly and easily with markers. Okay, let's get started. But before we do, I want to encourage you to give yourself time. It takes practice. It's going to take a little time for you to become a good calligrapher, but you can do it. Let's look at these markers. These are the ones that are in the kit. There are 8 markers in 5 sizes, and they range from fine down to medium, then broad, then there is a double scroll and a triple scroll. So this gives you a wide range of projects that you can do, from tiny little place cards up to something you might want to put on the wall. I want to show you this scroll. This is a wonderful marker, and it gives you a special effect. I'll just come right over here and make a real quick stroke with the pen, and you can see that makes a double line. And I don't do anything differently. I just use the pen with the little notch. And so that's the double scroll pen in a red. There's also a triple scroll that gives you a triple line. They're absolutely wonderful for adding special effects, a special look, special attention to a headline if you want to emphasize something and really dress it up. I'm going to letter the word calligraphy and then talk a little bit about what's going on here. As I do this word with a marker, you can see that I'm actually building the letters in pieces. That's what makes it so nice and easy for anyone to do. It's really building letters piece by piece and not writing them. It really has no bearing on your handwriting, or your handwriting has no bearing on your calligraphy. So it's a matter of using these common strokes that you're going to see as we go through our video. Piece by piece, I'm building these letters. I'm not writing them. So it makes it within the reach of anyone to do. If you want to learn, if you practice, if you get to where you can learn the strokes, where they go in the letters, then you actually can do calligraphy far easier than you might have ever imagined. So there's the word done very quickly with a series of strokes, both uppercase and lowercase, and I'll show you how that works as we go along. There are 4 rules you need to remember every time you pick up your marker, whether you're doodling, whether you're practicing, or whether you're doing the greatest project you've ever attempted. If you'll remember these 4 things every time, you're going to learn so much quicker. The first thing you do is keep your pen point at a 45-degree angle. Now, what that means is make an L, split that L, and you have a 45-degree angle. Then you take your marker, line that chisel edge up with that line, and that's what achieves the thicks and thins. When your marker goes this direction, it gives you a thin stroke. When it's going this direction, you get a thick stroke. So as I make a letter here, you see that I'm not rotating the pen, I'm not varying the pressure. It's the 45-degree angle that gives me that unbroken ribbon-like look to the letters. The second rule has to do with where you hold your pen. Now, most of us hold our pen right back here in the back of our hand, whether it's a ballpoint or a pencil or whatever. That's how I use any other instrument rather than a lettering tool. When I'm lettering, I move that barrel right up on my index finger so that I can get the entire edge on the paper. If I hold it back here in the back, only the corner touches. If I move it up to my index finger, then the entire edge touches. That's very, very important. So that's the second rule. The third rule has to do with your little finger. You want to always keep your pinky out. I learned, it took me several weeks after I began doing calligraphy a long time ago, that if I would extend my pinky, I had so much more stability. It gave me an anchor so that when I do my calligraphy, whether I'm doing small letters where I can position my hand on the paper and not move it at all except my thumb, index, and middle finger, it's my pinky that allows me to do that. Let's look quickly and see how you achieve that posture. Extend your little finger to where it merely rests on the first joint of your ring finger. Those two joints coincide right there. You don't do anything else with the rest of your fingers in your hand. So just let that pinky extend. It gives you so much of an anchor that your letters will be steadier. The fourth rule has to do with stroke direction. You always want your marker to come down or to the right. You never push it up, and you never push it to the left, so that all your letters are formed in pieces. You can't ever push that marker in an upward position because it's going against the grain, and you want to always make sure that your strokes are coming down or to the right. We can't forget the left-handers because there will always be some southpaws in the audience. What you have to do if you're a left-hander is still achieve that 45-degree angle. As I align the pen with that 45, that's the position of my hand. If I'm a left-hander and I have to use this same marker, because markers, the way the points are constructed, they are all the same. They can't be designed specifically for southpaws. So what I have to do is still align the pen with that angle, and it's so difficult. I could never move this way because it's too uncomfortable. So what I have to do is rotate the paper a quarter turn. If I turn it 90 degrees or a quarter turn, then with my left hand, I can achieve the 45-degree angle, and I can create the letters just as easily as a right-hander. Now, I'm not very accomplished as a left-handed calligrapher, but you see that the thicks and thins are in the right position with each other, and what you do is merely rotate your paper a quarter turn if you're a left-hander. As I mentioned earlier, we're using a few common strokes that are repeated over and over to make the letters. That way, again, you can build these letters piece by piece, and your handwriting doesn't have to be all that good. I've shown you 8 strokes here, so let's just see what happens when I begin to use the strokes. If I use number 1, 2, and 3, I get an A. And again, the reason I do the A in pieces is because I can't put the marker right here and go the other direction because I would be pushing. So that A is made up of 3 different strokes. When I make the B, I use this one, which is a number 4, and then I come around from the other side with a number 5. And when the strokes join, I lift the marker. The next letter is the C, of course, and I go right back to the beginning stroke of the A to use for the C. And then I'm going to use a stroke 6 to complete the C. All right, now when I make a D, watch what happens. I'm going to go right back to that stroke 1. It's the same beginning that I used on the A, and then I'm going to use the very same stroke that I used on the B to put on the back of the D, and then I'll borrow the top of the C here, which is that stroke 6, and fill in the little gap, and I have a D. When I make an E, I go right back to stroke 1 again. The next part of the E, I'm going to come over here and use the very same motion as I used on the front of the B, which is a stroke 5. I'm going to shorten it just a little bit and bring that right in there, and I have an E. Okay, one more letter. Let's do an F. This is a stroke that starts at the top, always at a 45, and you end at a 45. Notice how I lifted the pen very quickly at the end of that stroke, and then I'll use the top of the C for the top of the F, which is that stroke 6. And then I'm going to use a new stroke, number 8, to bring it in from the back side and let it join on the tail of that F. And then I'll use the top of the A, which is stroke 2, to cross the F. So you see that I'm using stroke 1 over and over just in these few letters and repeating several other strokes to make A through F. Now watch what happens if I put 7 stroke 1s down just to illustrate how that stroke is used over and over. I'll go to a different color marker, and just very quickly I'll add these other strokes and you can see what we get. You get an A or a C, or we can make a D, an E, a G, can make an O, and a Q. And all those letters have the same beginning. So if you can make stroke 1, and through practice you can, it's very, very easy. You put your pen to the paper, you repeat it, you do it over and over until you're comfortable. Before you know it, you're making a number of letters. Now, you saw me make only 8 strokes of the first of all the 14 that are used, and it takes 14 to make the entire alphabet. Here they are. You saw me go through here. In order to create G through Z to complete the entire alphabet, I only had to create 6 more strokes. So it takes those 14 pieces to build all the letters, and the trick becomes through practice and repetitious doing it over and over, you learn where they go, and before you know it, you're building letters. It does not require any artistic talent, and I don't care what your handwriting looks like, you can do it. Let's look at the uppercase letters. It actually takes fewer strokes to make the uppercase than it does the lowercase. It only takes 12, and here they are. Now you can see that the uppercase letters are a little fancier, there's a little bit more to them, and it actually takes more strokes to make any individual letter, but you only have 12 to deal with. So the beauty of this alphabet is that you learn a few pieces, you learn where they go, you put them together in the right order, and you have very exquisite chancery cursive calligraphy. And I haven't mentioned that word. That's the style that we're talking about. There are other styles, and toward the end I'll give you a comparison of chancery cursive and Old English. Let's talk about letter sizes. This is very important. Often people don't know how to begin if they take a marker without any instructions or any layout material, and they'll begin to letter without knowing how tall to make the letters or how much space to put between the lines of lettering. Here's the guide. If you'll allow 4 pen widths, 4 marker widths, that means just make a little checkerboard design here, connecting them at the corners, and then come down and do 5 more. Then that gives you the body of the letter and allows for the top of the capital letters as well as the ascenders of the L's and the T's and the K's and all that. Then you need to allow 4 pen widths for the descenders, which would be like the tail of the Y and the tail of the G and the P and so on. Then 1 pen width, 1 marker width for a space for clearance, 4 more for the tops of the letters on the next line, and then 5 marker widths for the next line of lowercase letters. So what that does then, it gives you a relationship of 5 and 9 between and 5 for the next line. So 5 pen widths for a line of lettering, 9 for clearance, 5 for the next one. So that then gives you somewhere to start from. On a blank sheet of paper you can do those little checkerboards and lay out your lettering and know where to go. Now, to save you from making all the little checkerboards and make life easier for you on your layout, we've created a wonderful template. It's called the Guideliner, and the way it works is that 5 and 9 and 5 and 9 relationship has already been figured out for you. So what I'm going to do to use this template on a simple layout right here where I'm going to do 2 lines. I've already drawn the lines, but the way I got them was to lay this template down on the correct set of spacings for the pen that I'm going to use. And I merely put a little dot in this opening to indicate where that line spacing is, and then I take the template away, draw the lines on there with a straight edge, and then I'm ready to go. So just quickly, if that were the project of drawing the lines for this marker, within seconds, do those guidelines, and then I could sail right on and do the lettering that I needed, filling out the space, and my layout and centering and all would be absolutely perfect. Okay, let's talk about spacing across the line. So many times I get mail from people and the calligraphy will be absolutely beautiful, but the spacing will kill it. So let me show you what you need to watch for. This is far too tight. Letters here are almost touching each other. They're almost overlapping, so don't do that. This is too loose. When you get to a situation and you see a lot of air between the letters, you know that you've got to tighten them in. So this is the other extreme from this. This is erratic. This is too much. This is too much space here. It's not enough here. There's no consistency at all. So what I've done is I've put the next word, I just pretended that it might be cat, and the way you do the spacing between words is to put the space of a lowercase o. Just visualize an O going in there between those two words. But the thing is, make your spacing look more like the word spacing is up here, where each letter is gently touching each other, and that way you're going to achieve the right look. Now, I'm going to take just a minute and show you how you can make that happen. If I letter the word calligraphy and let every letter ending connect with the next letter, it almost automatically makes my spacing proper. Now the ends of these letters right here are called serifs, S-E-R-I-F. And if I kick the pen up, the marker up very quickly when I get to that baseline, then it automatically spaces my letters and makes everything nice and uniform. When I get to a place where I don't have a serif, I just take a second and make sure that the letters don't touch, but they have a nice even flow between them. Now I have another serif on the end of that A. I can bring the P down, connect it right there, put the little tail on it, and then when I do the H, I don't have a serif again, but I don't want it to touch the P, and then I make the final part of the H, then it gives me a serif to tie on the Y. So if you make those serifs nice and uniformly, and I'm going to show you more about that as we go along, that will govern your spacing and help that work very nicely. Okay, now that you know all the rules and regulations for hand and pen position, let's make some letters. The first one we'll do is the lowercase a. As you saw me make it earlier, it takes 3 strokes. I put them together that way in the correct order to make the letter. If you have room at the end of the line where you may have this particular letter as an ending, you can put that on it for a little variation and to take up some space. On the uppercase A, it takes these strokes. Now remember that I'm keeping the marker point at a 45-degree angle, and that's what's giving me these thicks and thins in the right places. A B is made up of 2 strokes. The lowercase b starts that way, and then I'll bring the pen right back up here, come up to the guideline, and when it connects, I lift the marker right off the page. Here's a capital B. Notice how I lift the marker quickly at the end of these strokes. That gives me that nice sharp ending. Again, it's called a serif, and then I can bring these strokes in from the other side, go in and fill that in just a little bit, and then I have a B. Here's the C. Remember, it starts exactly like the lowercase a, and then I'll add that stroke to the top. The capital C is the same thing. It's just larger. So I'll bring the marker down, hit the bottom guideline, then come back up here and go the other direction to complete that letter. Remember the 4 rules. I cannot emphasize too strongly how important it is to keep that little finger out to make sure your marker is always at that 45-degree angle. You keep that marker elevated on your index finger also. Here's a D. It starts out just like the A and the C. There's the first stroke, The next one, I fill it in with that little stroke right there, which is actually the top of the C. Now here's another variation of that letter. And it's fun to be able to do this when you get to the end of the line, and if you have space, you can just add that little flourish. The capital D starts off like this, then it comes down. I lift the marker quickly to get that serif. I come up, lift it quickly there, and then I'm going to come around from the other side. And again, you don't get in any hurry. You let them join, and when they do, then you lift your marker off the paper. Here's an E. This is one of my favorite lowercase letters. Starts off just like an A or a C, and then I'm going to bring this stroke in from the side and let it join right there. Here's another nice little visual thing you can add to the E that makes it kind of nice. Here's an E, a capital E. Starts off like that, then we come down with this stroke, lift it again quickly, then bring your marker to the right, lift it quickly to get that serif, come back and add that stroke, and then with a little dip and then a straight line, you cross it. The lowercase f starts off, this is kind of a long stroke, and you have to move your hand just a little bit in order to achieve that. Then you come around from the left, let those two strokes join, then you come back up and put this stroke, which is again the top of the C. It's the very same stroke. The one I'm crossing with is the top of the A. So again, these pieces are being used over and over throughout the alphabet. Here's a capital F. Starts off just like the capital E. Then I bring this around from the side, bring this down and around, and then cross it with that. Now you're seeing some of these strokes that are used identically from letter to letter. And that, again, is what makes this so easy and non-intimidating. Give yourself time to learn these individual pieces, and before you know it, your letters will start coming together and you'll be so pleased. Here's a lowercase g. It starts off just like the A again. To this point, I could actually make an A from it, but I'm going to dip down and use a new stroke that you haven't seen, lift the marker quickly, then come in from the other side, and when they join, I lift. You want this to be the thinnest part of your letters. You want those strokes to join at a very thin point, and that's what you get from lifting the marker at that correct point. When you would begin to push it and you have to lift it, then that's where the strokes come together. Okay, here's a capital G. It takes those two, and then we'll make that stroke right there, then bring this down, lift the marker quickly, and then add that little foot right there. Here is a lowercase h. Now this is a letter too that you can have some fun with. I'm going to take a second and do a couple of variations, and then you can see how you could give the same treatment to a K or an L, some of the other letters that have the ascenders. You can bring it around this way and let your top have that shape, or you can do this. And you can even do this if you have the room and want to give it a little bit of extra flavor. You can add it like that. And then of course you can also add the little swash on the end like you've seen me make on the E and the A and the lowercase d. Okay, here's an H, a capital H. Starts off so much like many of the other letters. I lift the marker quickly, bring that stroke in from the left, come around, bring this one down and up and over, and then cross it. Now that looks like a lot of strokes, and it is. There are several pieces that make up that letter, but each of them is very, very simple to accomplish. The lowercase I is probably the easiest letter because it's one motion, and then you can put the little top like that. Some people prefer to just put a dot, but for some reason or another, I always add a little bit more freedom and give it that little swash like that. Here is an uppercase I. Comes down below the guideline, bring that stroke in from the left. When it joins, you lift, and then bring this around, stop, and lift your marker where you get a nice square ending. So you see these pieces individually are not difficult to make. The trick comes in practicing and getting your confidence up by doing it over and over in your practice pad and in your book, and you will be so pleased at the comments you'll get from people who see your work. All right, let's do a J. Now, I want to point out that the titles on these boards are all different. I've given a different treatment to each of the letters, and if you'll notice when I put each board up, you'll see different shapes to the letters than these basic ones that I'm showing you. Here's a J. Comes down, lift quickly, bring that stroke in from the left. You see how common that motion is? If you can do it on one letter, you can do it on all of them. Here's the capital J. Sometimes I like to bring it down a little bit below the guideline. You can stop it right on the line if you want, but there's a J. Here's a K. Come down. Let me point out another thing. You notice how the top of these letters have a slight bend? I just have always put that on there rather than having just a straight line. It just gives it a little bit more visual interest. So give it a little bend at the top. Here's one other way you can do the K. Of course, there are many. If you have the room, you can do that. Now here's the capital K. Now I'm going to run into the tail of that letter above, almost, and then I get that letter. Now notice how I came in from the left on the sample here, but on this letter, I've given it a little bit of a different touch and put just a foot right there on the bottom. The lowercase l, one motion. Very simple. Not much you can do to add to that. And then here's the uppercase L. That stroke, and then I'm going to come back the other direction. Remember, I can't start right here and push because I'm making the marker go the wrong direction. So I have to do it in pieces. Then I'll line the marker up at the end of that first stroke I made and come this way, and then I have the completed capital L. Okay, let me show you how this book works. I've just taken a page out of our calligraphy book to show you how the exercises work and how quickly you can learn these letters by the repetition. You'll get several strokes that are on here for you to trace. So I'm going to merely put the marker, and it tells you which marker to use in the kit. You put the marker over the example strokes and you trace it, and then you make some on your own. And there are little guidelines on here to keep you straight, to keep you level, make everything work just right. And then you do stroke 2, and you do several of those, and then you come down and you work on stroke 3. Now this is for the lowercase a. And then once you've made a number of each of the strokes, you merely come back and start doing them over, but now you're assembling them into letters. So there's stroke 1, stroke 2, and 3, and you have the A. So the book is set up this way to help you learn rapidly by doing those strokes over and over, and it forces you to make the letters come together. All right, let's go back to our alphabet now. We'll start out with a lowercase m. This is a letter you can have some fun with also. It takes 3 different strokes, those right there, and then if you, like on some of the other letters, if you have the room at the end of the line, you can come back and add that flourish. The capital M, I want to point out something that's very important when you do the capital M. Of course, like the other letters, you bring that stroke down, lift it, and then bring the next one in from the left. Then I'm going to make this leg like that, and then this one comes down to join it at the bottom, and then this one. The thing you want to look for is to make sure that this leg and this leg are parallel, as are this one and this one. So when you're making the letter, just make sure that you're making those parallel so it'll have the right shape. Here's the lowercase n. The variation, you already know, just like that. Capital N. I'm going to dip below the line. If I have the room, I like to make that leg a little bit longer sometime. And also you can make this one quite tall if you want. It's a little bit taller than the example. Here's the lowercase o, 2 strokes. That one, and then you come right around to the other side, let them join, and you have the O. Then the capital O is the same thing, except it's just taller. So there you have. We're all the way through O using markers, putting the strokes together, making it very easy. To help you learn these strokes, to help you get the shape of them in your mind, to make it where it's almost automatic, we've created a practice pad, and this pad is marked off with lines that are properly set for a variety of pens. It will tell you at the bottom which pen to use for that particular set of guidelines. The pad will accommodate lowercase, uppercase. It is a quick and easy way for you to grab a marker, turn to the page that's designed for that marker with the proper line spacings and letter height, and you can fill up the pad, save that pad, put a date on it. In fact, there's a little space at the top where you can actually date the pad the day that you made those practice sheets. If you'll save them, poke them in the drawer, come back and look at them later, I know you'll see progress, and it's fun to see how you've grown and how you're getting better, and that only comes with practice. If you're going to be a pianist, you got to sit at the keyboard. Same thing with calligraphy. You do have to spend the time practicing. Okay, let's do a P. Here's a lowercase p. Come around from the other side, join it just like you've seen me do several times, and then bring that in from that side. When they join, you lift. A capital P is somewhat the same. At this point, we can make a B or several other letters. But this time, I'm going to come up to the guideline, bring that stroke down, lift it quickly to get that serif, and then come in the other side, from the other side, and let them join. The Q, you've already seen, at least to this point, except I'm going to turn that stroke backwards and then add that one, and we have a Q. It's really part of an A. It's the beginning of a G. All right, here's a Q, capital Q. It's an O, and that stroke right there, which, if you'll remember, was what I used on the K, both the capital K and the lowercase. Here's an R. Two strokes. Sometimes I'll get real fancy. On the poem behind me, on the wall, you can see where I've done an R like that. And that's kind of a fun thing to do. When you get loose and you can add some freedom into your work, when you get a little bit of confidence built up, you can do this, and you won't do it on every letter, but where you can, where you have the space, it really adds a lot of visual interest. The uppercase R is put together so much like many of the other letters. Now I'm going to change. I actually traced that one. I haven't been doing that. Look how you can add that foot onto it. Where I stopped the one right before, up higher, you can see how I made that one longer. Now here's the other treatment of it. You can make this little foot instead of coming in from the left, and then just make it short, make it end on that guideline. The thing to remember as you do your calligraphy, whether you're practicing or whatever, is really work on that little finger. So many times when I'm teaching workshops, people have difficulty keeping that pinky out, and they give up, and they never have the stability and the real even flow in their letters like they could if they kept that little finger extended. So really work on that. Here's an S. It's 3 strokes. Come in from the back and let it join, and then I add the top. I have to take a second and show you a couple of things not to do on the S. If you make that too steep, that stroke right there, then your S is going to be falling forward. If you make it to where it's too dramatic that way, then it's falling backward. You want that center stroke to be right at this angle, which is about a 45-degree angle going down. So keep that in mind as you make your S so that they do have the right shape. Here's the capital, same thing. Same motions, just expanded to make them larger. Here's the T. The T is just like the L. At that point, it could be, if we left it right there, we have an L. Take the top stroke of the A, same motion, cross it, and you have a T. Sometimes, again, if I have the space, I may do this and just add a little extra stroke out there. Here's the capital letter. I'm going to come down, lift the marker quickly, add that little foot, and then bring that stroke around from the side. Here is a U. 2 identical strokes. It's the stroke that you used on the I earlier. If I want to and I have the room, of course, I wouldn't do this in the center of a letter, but I can extend it that way at the end of the line if that's the last letter in the word. Here's the capital U. I'm going to come down. When I get to the baseline, notice how I lift my pen quickly. Look where the pen point stops. I'm way up in midair because I want that serif to be nice and sharp, and I can't come up and stop and then lift. I have to lift the marker very rapidly off the paper. Let's go back up to the title here. Look how I did the little top of the H with this little down motion, and I added a stroke to the C and then put a little dot. It just kind of formalizes it and makes it look special. If you want to do that, you can. You're going to go through this video a number of times, I'm sure, to see how each letter is formed. It takes time for you to remember how those strokes go together. If you have a letter that you're having trouble with, find that, zero your video at the beginning, set your marker, your time marker at a particular place, write those numbers down, and then come back to it. If you want to see a letter repeated, if you're having trouble with that particular place, then go back. Let's make a V. This is a lowercase v. I'm going to trace the one that was there, and then I'm going to come over and do another one to show you how I can add just a little bit at the beginning sometime. If I have the room at the beginning of a letter, I may do that. Then the capital V is the same thing, except it's larger. And then I'll do that stroke, bringing it in from the other side, and I take my time so that these strokes want to join right at that baseline, and then I'll come back and add that. Here is a lowercase w. That stroke, and then that stroke again. And then I'm going to bring this one in from the other side. Notice how slowly I'm bringing it to where it joins that stroke, and then I just lift the marker off the paper. With my little finger on the paper, I can do that. I have all this control with my thumb, index, and middle finger. I can make that point go exactly where I want it to go. That's how you'll have the control that you'll need to make the connections work. Here's the uppercase W. Notice now that line comes, it's a straight line that comes right down to the baseline. And then this one's a straight line with a slight angle that comes down and joins it. Then another one, and then one more. Now this is like the M. We all know that a W is just an M upside down, and the same rule applies. This leg should be parallel to this, and these two should also be parallel. And then add your little your thing at the top, and you have the completed letter. Here's the X. Remember that stroke right there? It's what we used on the Q and the K. Now I'm going to come in from the other side and let that come right up into the body of that stroke, and then I lift, and then I'm going to come right out the other side and come up to the guideline, stop, and lift. It's very important that you stop that stroke and lift it rather than doing it all in one stroke. If you stop and lift at one time, you're going to have an indefinite, it's not going to be as pretty and square. So come up, stop, and lift. Then the capital X is really just an oversized version of the little one with a couple of extra strokes. That one's longer, but it's the same thing. I'm going to come up, over, stop, and lift. All right, let's do the Y. I'm going to come down here at the very bottom of the page, and I'm going to pick up this stroke right here. And then the next one comes down, and I lift quickly, then join from the left side. The capital Y is almost the same, but of course it's taller, and it has that additional beginning on it, where I'm going to come back here, like so. Now I made sort of a rough connection right there. I didn't let it join as smoothly as I should, so I'm going to come back up and just touch it very gently and come back down and smooth it out. Then this stroke comes down, and I lift quickly, bring this in from the back, and there's the uppercase Y. Last letter. The Z is like you're making a 3, and we haven't done numbers yet. I'm going to do that for you in just a minute. But there's that motion, which what you've seen to this point is the stroke on the B, the capital B. And then I do another one by connecting it right there. And then again, I come around from the left side and let it join and then lift the marker. And then the capital Z comes across, and then I'm going to come down at this angle like this, lift the marker quickly, and then bring this one down and up, and then finish it with this stroke right here. Now, I want to go back and show you something that you need to be aware of. I didn't mention it earlier. You saw me talk about serifs, you saw me make the serifs. Let's go back up and let me show you what you need to do every time you make letters that have this quick uplift. You want to lift your pen quickly and see if you can make it come about halfway the height of the letter. So that when you make, for example, an A, you want to get that serif up, and then you come across here and finish it with this stroke. You want to have this nice triangular opening. If you get lazy and let your stroke die right at the bottom, then when you make the other two strokes, you're going to have an A that looks like that. And which one would you rather have? One more time. Lift your pen nice and quickly, bring that one over, then bring this one down. That creates that wonderful triangular opening, which you see up here in the title. You see it appearing letter after letter. That's what gives you the uniformity that you're going to need in order to achieve nice, consistent calligraphy. Here's something you're probably going to be tempted to do sometime. I get calligraphy all the time in the mail, and so many times people want to fancy things up and make it in all capital letters, and it's very difficult to read. As you can see, these words that say calligraphy always inspires your creative juices is very, very hard to read when you make them in all capital letters. Here's the way you should do it. It's a sentence, so I just chose to start it with a capital letter and then do all the other words in lowercase. And you can see how much easier it is to read. So don't be tempted to do all your lettering or lettering in all caps on any project, because it's going to be too hard for people to figure out what you're trying to say. Okay, let's do numbers. Obviously, you're going to have to learn numbers for addresses, for a variety of reasons. You're going to have numbers in your work. So I have not assigned specific strokes to the numbers, but as you see me make them, after you've now seen me make all the letters, you'll see how easy it is to form each and every one of these numbers. I do the 1 by starting right there, and then I come down with a slight bend right at the bottom. The 2 is that stroke, and then I don't even lift the marker. I just pause and go there. The 3 is that stroke, and then I'll come around, lift my marker quickly, come in from the other side to form that real thin joining part. The 4 is made up of those 2 strokes, and then this one with a slight bend at the bottom. I make a 5 with those 2 strokes before I lift, and then back from the left, and go back to the top, stop, and lift. Anytime you have a stroke like this 5, you want to come across, stop, and lift, and don't do it all in one motion. Make that 2 different things. Stop and then lift. Here's a 6. I'm very carefully and slowly making that second stroke so it joins and doesn't overlap and make a ragged connection, and then I go back to the top. There's another stop and lift. Here's a 7. Come across, and then I'll move my hand slightly where I can come down and make that bottom with a bend just like that. Here's the 8. It's made up of 2 O's, just 2 circles, or like the letter O. And you have the 8. Then here's a 9. Look where my pen stopped. Look where the marker stopped as I made that stroke to make it nice and sharp. I lifted it and it ended up in midair. Then I'm going to come right back from here, make them connect, and then the O is a piece of cake. It goes there, and the other one comes from the other side, and I let them touch, and then I stop. So there you have numbers. How tall do you make the numbers? Generally, I make them just about the size of the lowercase letters. Sometimes I'll make them a little bit taller. It depends on what I'm doing, what the address may be, where I'm using it, but generally I make them the same as the lowercase letters. Here's a way that you can add so much depth and dimension to your work, and that's by adding a shadow. I'm going to show you how to make the shadows, and it may look complicated, but it's not. If you'll visualize these letters standing off the paper just slightly, let's say that they were just about a ½ inch tall. If there were a light source right here, those letters would cast a shadow. So knowing that, if we come back in here then with a marker, and I'm going to use a scroll marker to even add a little really extra class to the shadow, I can do this. Now again, the light would be here. If this S stood up above the paper, then it would cast a shadow just like you see it right there. And then I merely come around to the other letters, and where the light would cast that shadow, I make a stroke. Now this could be done with a solid pen, and you would have a solid shadow. And of course the shadow would be solid, but this just gives you another option of making it a little fancier. So it doesn't take long to do it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You can merely lay those strokes in where the shadow would occur, and there you have it. So do that where you want to add emphasis to a word. It's not something you're going to do all the time or very, very often, but it's a nice touch when you want to add that extra dimension and a little bit of pop to your lettering. By now you should have a pretty good handle on Chancery cursive. All the cursive letters are sort of curvy and smooth, and you've seen how I blend the strokes together to make the finished letters. A lot of people equate calligraphy with Old English, and that also has another name called Gothic. Those two sort of interchange. Well, the two are not that different, although they appear very differently, and the Old English looks more formal, looks more difficult to do. It really isn't. Let me show you how closely they are related. You know that 3 strokes like this make up the cursive A. If I want to do an Old English A, I make just a couple of changes. The first stroke is changed to this. It sort of squares off. The top is a straight line. The right side, stroke 3, looks like that, and when I put them together, then I get a letter that looks like this. I haven't changed my hand position, I haven't changed the pen position, the motions, everything are the same. It's just that by making the letter vertical rather than leaning, you get the Old English character. It is really wonderful to be able to do at least 2 alphabets. You'll want to use this when you're doing the lead page in a Bible. Maybe someone will ask you to do a wedding certificate. The Old English really adds a lot of class and formality to your work. So that's another book and another video. We'll teach you how to do Old English later, but I wanted to just kind of tempt you with that just a little bit. Now you've seen Chancery cursive, upper and lowercase. You've seen lots of variations and a lot of treatments of the strokes and letters. We're going to close out with one other thing, a couple of things that I think will be helpful to you. As you do a layout, when you begin to put your calligraphy to practice, take a soft pencil like a 6B. You'll need a T-square or some way to draw horizontal lines across your project, and let the weight of the pencil draw the lines. Once you've used the guide liner or whatever method that you'll use to determine the line spacings, use a soft pencil. Then when your marker ink is dry, be sure you come back with a white eraser and just gently rub it across those lines, and the lines will disappear. Nothing worse than having guidelines stay on your finished work. Now, I want to show you one more variation of Chancery cursive, and that's, we're going to do the beginning of, at least the beginning of the poem behind me on the wall. Now, in the Chancery cursive you've seen me do before, all the letters lean to the right. Now we're standing them vertically. And the motions and the strokes and all the rules are the same. It's just that the letters are standing vertically instead of leaning. And it gives your work an entirely different look. I'm not doing anything differently. I'm still holding the marker at a 45. And you'll see that when you've done several words that stand instead of lean, it will really give it a totally different feel. Notice also that I'm adding these little special touches to the tops of these letters, the L's especially, the L and the B rather, that you didn't see on the other letters in the instructions quite so much. But it's a way that you can dress up and make your letters really quite different. Now if I went on and finished this line and then did the next, you would see that as the piece is done behind me, it does have a different feel. Well, there you have it. A good look at Chancery Cursive, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, lots and lots of variations, ways to help you learn this absolutely wonderful art form and a terrific way of self-expression. If you'll practice daily, get into that practice pad, use your time, set aside a time every day, and dedicate that to practicing and making yourself better. Allow yourself the time to be pretty good until you become super, and you can with practice. Don't limit yourself to papers. There are so many surfaces. I've worked on canvas, I've worked on wood. Leather is a wonderful medium to work on. So practice daily, have a great time with your calligraphy, make it work for you, you'll enjoy it, and let me hear from you. I really would like to see some of your work.
For more exciting ideas, visit our website at plaidonline.com.